Hello dear chess friends, this is Grandmaster Leonid Kritz for chesslectures.com. Today I'll show you a game from the first 2021 big tournament in vacancy between Magnus Carlsen and Alireza Firouzja. The Carlsen had white, a very interesting game with a very important pawn structure in it. So let's move on. d4, knight f6, c4 e6, knight c3, d5, knight f3, knight bd7, one of the popular continuations. Today bishop g5, h6, bishop h4, bishop e7, and Carlsen takes on d5. So now black has two options. He can either take with a pawn or a knight, and in this game decided to take with a knight. Bishop takes e7 and queen takes e7. So now white generally has two possibilities. He can either take on d5 or play e4. I think that e4 is significantly stronger. After knight takes d5, e takes d5, the position is very primitive. Black will play c6, then a5, preventing white from playing b4 for a long time, then castle short, and it will be very difficult for white to get anything material out of it. So Carlsen plays e4, black takes, white takes, and this is a very typical pawn structure where white has the center. Black, however, exchanged two light pieces, which is good for him. It makes his defense easier, and in the future he plans to play c5, exchange one pair of pawns, and play b6, bishop b7, hoping that his position is solid enough to keep equality. So let's see what happens here. Knight c3, b takes c3, short castle, bishop d3, c5, short castle, c takes d4, c takes d4, and b6. So black develops the bishop on b7 and hopes to exchange more pieces if possible. But one problem that he has here is that his knight already moved to d7, which means the knight cannot go to c6, and so white has the possibility to play a4 with idea to play a5 and to create black potentially another weakness on the b file. So white does it immediately, bishop b7, a5. So if black doesn't do anything, then I'm not even sure white will take on b6. Maybe he has this option, but he also can play a6, taking the square b7 and then asking black the question, what is he going to do with the bishop? But I think a takes b6 by itself is pretty unpleasant. So black takes, rook takes a5. So now white has pressure over the a file and will attack the a pawn. Also black plays knight f6, attacking on e4. In general, it is not advisable for white to play e5 very quickly, because that eliminates many opportunities that he otherwise would have. So after e5 now, black can play knight to d5. Something like bishop takes f3, I'm not sure if that works in general. No, that just fails here. He takes f6, and after I take on d1, then I take on e7, attacking your rook and the bishop. So that doesn't work at all. So knight d5. Now white has a problem with his knight on f3. Doesn't go anywhere at this moment. And black has a very easy play now. He knows exactly what to do. He'll play rook d8 and prepare pressure against the pawn d4. So white's only chance would be something like queen e2, queen e4, but then there are two ways black can defend against it. One is g6, and second is f5. And after taking, knight takes f6. So the position becomes complicated, and usually white prefers to wait as long as possible because sometimes he wants to play d5, sometimes e5. So most of the time he's not in a hurry here. So knight f6, rook e1, rook f d8, but for now it's really well protected, so white has no problems. Queen a1, queen c7. So white has a possibility to take on a7, but black must have prepared something. So rook a8 I think looks very good, because now after queen c5, queen takes c5, d takes c5, rook c8, black attacks the pawn, e4 is hanging, so rook c1 doesn't work, rook b1 doesn't work because bishop is 4, and black eventually gets the pawn back, and this endgame is drawish. So white cannot take immediately, and so instead of doing this, he plays h3. Very solid move. The king now has some room, which is important. a6. So again, taking on a6 doesn't work because e4 hangs. Rook c5, queen f4. Overall, I cannot say that white is really much better here. He has the center, but it looks to me like black does have enough counterplay. He is pressuring e4. He has the a6 pawn, which, depending on what white does, may move forward. So if the pawn gets a4, it will become a very dangerous one. Yeah, so white has to take care of that too. So overall, I think the position is somewhere in dynamic balance. So queen f4 attacking the pawn, rook e5, then knight e7, rook goes to a5, knight f6. And now Carlsen shows strong character. He decides that he doesn't want to repeat moves, which most players probably would do. And he actually goes for a pawn sacrifice to get some initiative. He plays d5. This is a very typical sacrificing situation in these pawn structures. E takes d5 and now e5. What white achieves is the bishop b7 becomes bad. The bishop d3 on the other side comes pretty strong. White gets the square d4, and now the best that white can do here is to play against the black king. So let's see how he does it. Knight e4, queen d4. So first of all, everything, the pawn is blocked on d5, another one is blocked on a6, nothing is moving. So black is very passive, but he is pawn up. Rook d c8. Rook a1. So the rook returns. And the goal is to take square c1 under control, because black wanted to exchange the rooks when the rook was on a5. And the more pieces black exchanges, the better it is for him, because the more difficult it is for white to get the compensation. So now rook a1, a5. As I said, the pawn starts moving, and if it gets to a4 or a3, it obviously will get quite dangerous. Rook ab1, attacking the bishop, bishop c6, and white sacrifices another pawn. He plays e6. Very interesting. So black takes, knight e5. c6, it's really not really hanging at this moment, but it can become unpleasant, yeah? If white takes at some point on c6, on e4, all the pawns become weak. So depending on what's going on, also rook b6 is a threat, attacking c6, and if the bishop moves away, then the e6 pawn will be weak. So queen f6 and f3. So of course white could have taken on e4, then on c6. He can get one pawn back, but that's not what he wants. He wants to play against the king. He really wants to develop a strong attack. Knight g5, rook b6, bishop e8, queen e3. So this move is played because black wanted to play knight f7. So black plans to play knight f7 and then exchange the queens or the knights. So white plays queen e3 to prevent this. And now the position looks quite dangerous for black, because white wants to attack the knight. He wants to play h4. The pawn e6 may hang. Knight g4 is an option. White may want to sacrifice the exchange. So the computer suggests a defense by playing queen d8, which is very not straightforward, let's say the least. But in the game, black played the most natural move. He played a4. And really, he needs only two moves, and then he will threaten with a1. But now white comes very quickly. Knight g4, queen d8, and rook takes e6. And all of a sudden it looks like the position of black is falling apart. Knight takes e6, queen takes e6, and bishop f7. So this was the last mistake. Instead of that, king h8 was still playable, but then white has queen f5 with very strong and unpleasant position. However, he loses immediately. Knight takes h6, g takes h6, queen takes h6. Now the threat is to play bishop h7, king h8, bishop g6, then queen h7, queen f7, checkmate. Black plays queen c7, but then he loses to queen h7, king f8, queen h8, bishop g8, and queen h6. So now after queen g7, there is a checkmate, and after king f7, white will also checkmate after playing bishop g6, king f6, bishop h5, king f5, and g4. It's a very nice and interesting game, especially this pawn structure and the main idea d5 and e5. It is difficult to say whether white had really enough compensation. I'm pretty sure black could have played better, but in the real game, it's very difficult to find the right moves when you are under such pressure. And Carlsen showed one more time that he understands these positions very, very good. It's a great example of how to play these positions in general. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this game. This is Leonid Kritz for chesslectures.com, signing out.